So in this video we have to see about optical properties of nanomaterials. Whenever hearing about optical, we have to see with the light waves. So light waves are the basic terms for optical properties. So first we have to see about the light. Light is the form of energy detected by the eye and at ordinary scales can be treated as a wave. So it can be called as light wave. So light waves are part of the electromagnetic spectrum ranging continuously from very long radio waves to high energy cosmic rays. A light wave moving to the right can be represented by the equation Ey is equal to E naught into cos 2 pi by lambda x minus Vt plus pi, where E gives the power of the optical signal, 2 lambda gives the wavelength, x is the distance, v is the velocity of the waveform carried over the time period t, and pi is the phase of the optical waveform. So these optical waveforms, whenever it's visible, then only we can see with the eye. So it ranges from 400 nanometer to 700 nanometer in the electromagnetic range as visualized in this slide. So the interaction of materials and radiation is an important thing to visualize the signals. So the intensity I of an electromagnetic wave proportional to the square of its amplitude is a measure of energy it carries. So the energy reacts with the material and it radiates. So when radiation with the intensity I naught strikes a material, a part of infrared of it is reflected apart and absorbed, and a part of it may be transmitted. So it will be coming under conservation of energy, which requires IR by I naught, that is reflected light by the total light I naught plus absorbed current intensity IA divided by I naught plus transmitted current I suffix T by I naught is equal to 1. This gives the law, this satisfies with the law of conservation of energy. So we are with the incident beam, we will be getting reflected beam or scattered beam. It's based on the angle of incidence what we are having and the planar structure in which the incident beam is made to fall over. So if the incident beam over the first figure, if the incident beam making an angle theta 1 incident over a smooth surface, it is reflected with an angle theta 2 based on the axial line. And if it is made to fall over a rough surface which is not smooth over its surface, then it gets scattered because of the non-uniformity over the surface of the structure where the beam is striking out. So if a beam has to travel over two different medium, it can get reflected or refracted. So the refraction is based on the refractive index of the material what we are using. So if it goes from positive direction, means it is refracted back in the opposite direction, and like that if the based on refractive index of the material, the refracted beam angle may occur. So this is the figure. And then absorption. So the first we have seen about reflection, refraction, then absorption. If radiation can penetrate a material, some of it is absorbed. The greater the thickness through which the radiation passes, the greater the absorption. The intensity, starting with the initial value I naught, decreases because of this absorption, as like I is equal to I naught into e to the power minus beta x, where beta is the absorption coefficient with dimension meter power minus 1, or conveniently millimeter per power minus 1, because most of the optical signals at this wavelength are in millimeter range. The absorption coefficient depends on wavelength, with the result that white light passing through a material may emerge with a color corresponding to the wavelength that it is least absorbed. That is why we are seeing different colored signals whenever it's passing over. and even rainbow is also having different colors, and the sky color is also because of the reflection, less absorption and high reflection. So a thick slab of ice looks blue because of this absorption property only. And transmission. By the time of a beam of light has passed completely through a slab of material, it has lost some intensity through reflection at the surface at which it is entered, some in reflection at the surface at which it leaves, and some by absorption in between. Its intensity is I is equal to I naught into 1 minus IR by I naught into e to the power I naught whole square into e to the power minus beta x. The term 1 minus IR by I naught occurs to the second power because intensity is lost through reflection at both surfaces, and it satisfies with the transmission property. So see, whenever we have to see with the transmission, we have to see with the band diagram property. So for that we have to see how the light wave enters with the enters over valence band and contents band. So for that we have to see ground state, excited state, and return to ground state, Fermi level, energy level, empty level. All those things we have to consider, because metals absorb photons, capturing their energy by promoting an electron from the filled part of the conduction band into a higher empty level. When the electron falls back, a photon is re-emitted. That's given over the first figure. So the dielectrics, this occurs in metals. If we use dielectric material, they are having a full band structure separated from the empty conduction band by an energy gap. So energy gap is given here as del E suffix gap. The material cannot capture photons with energy less than this energy gap, that is del E gap, meaning that for those frequencies the material is transparent. Photons with energy greater than del E gap, that is greater than the empty energy gap band, are absorbed and is illustrated as in the figure. So see, the electrons jump over and down whenever the energy gap is high. Whenever it is low, it won't pass over there, but in metals it freely goes on, jumps on over the conduction band to valence band to conduction band. Then refraction and dispersion. So refraction is the apparent bending of a ray of light when it enters a transparent material such as water or glass. The magnitude of the deviation is given by the index of refraction or refractive index. We know whenever light has been passed over a liquid, it gets refracted inside it because the refractive index of free space and water changes. So the refractive index is taken as n is equal to sin theta 1 by sin theta 2, where theta 1 being the angle of incidence and the angle of refraction, and theta 2 the angle of refraction. This equation is called as Snell's law. This equation is a special case of the more general relation that applies to light passing from a medium of refractive index n1 to one of the refractive index n2. Therefore sin theta 1 by sin theta 2 is equal to n2 by n1. If amorphous materials has been taken such as glass or in crystals with a cubic symmetry, the index of refraction is same in all directions. These are called optically isotropic solids. In many crystals, the index of refraction varies with direction. These are optically anisotropic materials. So from this refraction, we can divide optically isotropic and optically anisotropic materials. So the materials whichever having these optical properties has been listed over here. Vacuum, where the refractive index is nearly 1. Water, magnesium fluoride, potassium chloride, extra light flint glass, dense flint glass, zirconia, and perovskite. So these are the materials what we are using for optical property, for studying about the optical properties, where refraction, reflection, absorption, everything may occur. So based on the refractive index, these reflection refractions may occur. So here it has been given the effect of refractive index on the wavelength of light. The wavelength is compressed in materials with a high refractive index. That is given over here. For a higher refractive index, high wavelength is present. So next we have to see how does light get through dielectrics. The reason that radiation of certain wavelengths can enter a dielectric is that its Fermi level lies at the top of the valence band. Just below a band gap, the conduction band with its vast number of empty levels lies above it. To excite an electron across the gap requires a photon with an energy at least greater as the width of the gap, that is del E gap. This is what we have seen in the previous slide with the energy gaps. Thus, radiation with photon energy less than E gap cannot excite electrons. There are no energy states within the gap for the electron to be excited into. The radiation sees the material as transparent, offering no interaction of any sort, so it goes straight forward. So, if the energy level is high with the photons, then only it can go for conduction. Otherwise, no conduction, just it goes in a straight away path, and it is transparent only. And next we have to see luminance and phosphorescence. So this is how light is getting through the dielectric. Next one is luminance and phosphorescence. The emission of radiation by solids at relatively low temperature is called luminescence. So whenever we are using the lights, we can call it as photoluminescence. Photoluminescence is light emission brought about by the absorption of high energy photons, typically ultraviolet. The most widely utilized form of photoluminescence is fluorescence, in which light emission is immediate, taking place via allowed transitions. Then phosphorescence, so luminance is a form of fluorescence, and phosphorescence is similar but is typified by slow conversion of the exciting energy into light, so that light emission is delayed often by considerable length of time because the light emitting transitions are forbidden over it. So the types of luminescence will be photoluminescence, mainly because of photons; triboluminescence, where mechanical bond breaking, fracture or friction may occur; chemiluminescence because of chemical reactions; cathodoluminescence because of electron bombardment; thermoluminescence because of increase of temperature; electroluminescence because of applied electric field; bioluminescence because of life processes; radioluminescence because of radioactive decay; sonoluminescence because of ultrasonic waves. These are the types of luminance. And next we have to see reflection from a single thin film. So now we have to see reflection on a single thin film. Just consider now a monochromatic light traveling through air falling upon a homogeneous thin film of an insulator. It will be reflected from the top surface to give a reflected ray because it is an insulator. So the light transmitted into the film will be repeatedly reflected from the bottom of the surface, and the underside of the top surface. At each reflection, some of the light escape to produce additional reflected and transmitted ray. Because of the difference in paths taken by the repeatedly reflected rays, the waves will interfere each other. This is what given in the figure. So first the reflection is present at the surface, and then it again and again reflects over the bottom of the surface, over the surface itself, another angle like that, and over the surface itself changes with the repeated rays. Repeated reflections, it diffracted over the surface and covers the full surface to get reflected back to give addition of reflected and transmitted waves over the insulator film. So now next to the reflection, the coverage of reflection is because of diffraction present over there. So what is diffraction? Diffraction occurs when waves interact with the objects having a size similar to the wavelength of the radiation. In general, two regimes have been explored in most detail. So these are all the terms with optical communication. So we are seeing here because we have to study about optics in nanomaterials. So here diffraction is quite close to the object which interacts with the light, called Fresnel diffraction. And a diffraction far from the object which interacts with the light is called Fraunhofer diffraction. So diffractions are of two types, Fresnel and Fraunhofer. Fresnel means the diffraction occurring very close to the object. Fraunhofer means the diffraction occurring far from the object. The result of diffraction is a set of bright and dark fringes due to constructive and destructive interference called a diffraction pattern. And because of this, diffraction gratings may occur. Planar diffraction gratings consist of a set of parallel lines with a spacing similar to that of the wavelength of light. A transmission grating has alternating clear and opaque lines, and diffraction effects are absorbed in light transmitted by the clear strips. A reflection grating consists of a set of grooves or braces, and diffraction effects are observed in the light reflected from the patterned surface. The effectiveness of grating is the same whether light is transmitted through it or reflected from it. So whenever you have to see about the reflection on insulator, you have to give the diffraction and diffraction gratings also. Then photonic crystals. So one common form of a one-dimensional photonic crystal is a stack of transparent layers of alternative refractive indices similar to dielectric mirrors. They are called Bragg stakes. These also give reflection, refraction and transmission. Two-dimensional photonic bandgap crystals are also be constructed from a two-dimensional array of voids or particles in transparent medium, and opal is an example of three-dimensional photonic bandgap crystal. So we are having one-dimensional, two-dimensional and three-dimensional photonic crystals, and many animals use natural photonic crystal structures for the production of vivid colors, including iridescence in butterfly wings, beetles and feathers. So moreover, with the properties of optics, we have to study about photoconductivity and photovoltaic solar cells also. If radiation of a suitable wavelength falls on a semiconductor, it will excite electrons across the band gap, giving rise to a voltage and a related increase in conductivity. Solids that behave in this way are called photovoltaic materials. The magnitude of this photovoltaic or photoconductive effect is roughly proportional to the light intensity. It is used in light meters, exposure meters and automatic shutters in camera. The first photographic exposure meter used selenium, cadmium sulfide or silicon. In the case of selenium, the photovoltage is large enough to be measured directly and converted to an exposure value. Cadmium sulfide and silicon need voltage amplification, and these materials require a power source, usually a battery, to give a reading. In these materials, a voltage is applied across the semiconductor and illumination levels are measured as an increase in conductivity. So with a PN junction diode, we can take it as a single piece of semiconductor. However, the control afforded by the junction makes the device a photodiode far more flexible. As a result, photodiodes are widely used, especially in solar cells. A solar cell is a specialist large area PN junction with a depletion region approximately 500 nanometer thick. Solar cells must have a large area to collect as much sunlight as possible. In addition, the normal built-in potential that exists across the junction due to space charge is engineered to be high. The junction is not connected to any external power source. Holes and electrons produced in the junction region by sunlight and swept across the depletion region by the high built-in space charge present. The electrons going from P to N region and the holes from N to P region. The process called drift makes the P region more positive and N region more negative, produces a photovoltage and causes a photocurrent I to flow. The process is just similar to PN junction diode, but the carriage of cells is because of there is a sunlight. So that's given over here, and the area, the medium, what we are using, those things are under consideration. So the solar cell schematic is given over here, where P material, N material and junction region is there. Over the junction region is the space charge region where the drift of hole and electron may occur. Whenever sunlight is made to fall over anti-reflective coating, no reflection will be there. Negative friend contact is present over here, no reflection, so it always absorbs. So it may be most of the time it's a black painted coating, and this is an n-type semiconductor of 10 to the power minus 5 meter. It absorbs all the sunlight and make p-type. If a p-type semiconductor, the charges may accumulated over there, and whenever it is made to be near n-type region, movement of charges may occur, and so current will be there. So dye sensitized solar cells are also there. The method of conservation of sunlight to energy in a conventional solar cell is quite different to that of most importance on the earth, photosynthesis, where the central reactions are oxidation and reduction. Photoelectrochemical cells, of which dye sensitized solar cells are called Gratzel cells, are an important example which aim to mimic this process. The task of harvesting the light is left to a sensitizer, which is a dye molecule, and the carrier transport task is allocated to a semiconductor. Because the charge separation takes place in the dye, the purity and defect structure of a semiconductor are not crucial to satisfactory operation. So in this way, dye sensitized solar cells are also used, and because of the dye molecule, as I have told you, the black paint like that, dye sensitized molecules, the solar cells get activated because of the follower lights. So this is the schematic of dye sensitized solar cell, where whole electron region is present, load is present, or oxidized species is present, and transparent conducting oxide is also pasted over the region, outer region. So because of this transparent conducting oxide, whatever the photon lights passed over there, that's absorbed. So the conduction band, valence band movement is very smooth, and Fermi level is also very nearby, and so the energy levels, excitation, because of the sunlight falling over there, makes it to move from one band to another band, that is valence band to conduction band, and so it gets excited. So electron hole combination occurs, drifting of whole electron present, and so current is also induced. So the optical properties of quantum wells has also to be considered, where the same, there is subbands, interband transition to upper level to lower level, and band gap, everything has to be considered. And these are all green emitting single quantum level, where the same has been in the interband transmissions has been explained in detail. Then the optical properties of nanomaterials. So nanomaterials itself is it's having photoluminescent properties, which we have seen in the quantum dots as well in the previous units itself. In the previous videos itself, we have seen how the optical property of photoluminescent nanoparticle occurs with quantum dots. So based on the dimension, the color changes, that's given with quantum dots like this. So whenever the nanoparticle size changes, the color changes, that's given with the photoluminescence, that is fluorescence colors of different diameter dots, it's given over here. So these are the properties associated with optical properties associated with nanoparticle.